Hey everyone. Um, let's see. Today we're going to be talking a bit more on a more sensitive subject. But I'm going to use since I don't have many subscribers yet on YouTube, I'm going to take advantage of this being, cuz it's not going to be monetized because of the subject, but um we're going, as you can tell with the title and the thumbnail, um we're going to be talking about World War II Germany, because everyone, like all the extreme vegans, like to call like everyone, you're just as bad as Hitler for um killing all the animals, the whole uh animal holocaust, or whatever garbage that extreme vegans like to say. So I discovered a few tabs over here. um and we're going to tackle each one. I did a bit of research earlier, and um, these are just some of the things I've discovered. I don't want to spend too long on the subject, but um, we're gonna start off with um, Hitler was a vegetarian. I think this is in a book, Moral Acrobatics, and it's an excerpt from a couple pages on here apparently. Um, I guess just a summary, and it says we all have morals, including Hitler, who is contemptuous of meat eaters, a self-proclaimed vegetarian, and militant protector of animals. He was also a devoted son, devastated when his mother died, often tagged criminal of the century Gestapo in chief. Heinrich Himmler, Himmler was responsible for running all Nazi concentration and extermination camps. He was also a die-hard vegetarian, fervently opposed to hunting. Such facts are hard to fathom, especially by vegans and vegetarians. Mostly vegans, because apparently they don't really see this side. Um, they show that the central moral philosophy and psychology question is not whether to have some morals or others don't. Real questions are what kind of morals, what are they made of, where they come from, and more important in this book, what holds them together in spite of blatant inconsistencies. So yeah, it is a bit of an excerpt, like summary for this book. Um I might get it. Um Maybe. But I just want to say that and in case you need more, yes, they, like in Nazi Germany, they really did have animal welfare in mind. And that's what most of this stuff is, because the whole point of whether or not Hitler was vegetarian is a bit controversial, but you can't really argue with the facts of what he actually did for animals. I'm not excusing, what the Nazis did to, people, but I'm just here to balance out how, you know, that vegans like to call, everyone who is like omnivorous, carnivore, pescatarian, or whatever, if you are not vegan, basically, you are basically as bad as a Nazi. So I'm here to justify, that no. But let's see. On this page, There was widespread support for animal welfare in Nazi Germany along the country's leadership. Took a variety of measures to ensure animals were protected. Were supporters of animal rights and conservation. Apparently, they were environmentalists, and species protection and animal welfare were significant issues in the Nazi regime. I wonder why vegans don't, you know, mention any of this. Like, it's really reflective of what you guys believe in, isn't it? What did the sign say? It's private diaries. No, no, no. What was? I saw something here. Um, Hitler planned to ban slaughterhouses in the German Reich. Some critics of animal rights used the historical link with Nazism to condemn the modern animal rights movement. On the other hand, supporters of animal rights often deny the historical link between Nazism and animal welfare. That is very, very obvious. Let's see. It's just a bunch of dates where they were trying to enforce it. Parliament began to pass laws for the regulation of animal slaughter. April 21, a law was passed concerning the slaughter of animals. No animals were to be slaughtered without anesthetic. Meaning it's they don't feel pain when they're slaughtered. Which isn't that what the whole our problem is with vegans, like saying, oh, they're feeling so much pain when you're slaughtering them. Isn't that what everyone is trying to um argue against? Um a law imposing a total ban on vivisection was enacted in August 16, 1933. And that's an end to unbearable torture and suffering in animal experiments, and said that those who still think they can continue to treat animals as inanimate property will be sent to the concentration camps. Huh. Also banned commercial animal trapping and imposed severe restrictions on hunting, prohibited boiling of lobsters and crabs. In one incident, he sent a fisherman to a concentration camp for cutting up a bait frog. Hey, I lost my place. Um, just education on animal protection laws at primary, secondary, and college levels. So Nazi Germany basically were teaching animal rights in schools and the laws that, uh, were enacted. Seems to me that vegans would much prefer Nazi Germany to be a global thing by how it sounds like by what I'm reading here. Because animal rights are taught in schools. People who hurt animals, like in basically any way that would result in pain, even if you were to slaughter them, um, would be sent to concentration camps, which are basically, you get killed in. It seems like vegans would much rather have, Nazism. Let's see. Let's see. Hmm. Lab animals giving the Nazi salute to Hermann Goring. Sorry if I mispronounced that. For his order on to ban vivisection. Let's see. And it's just saying where it's from. Goring prohibited vivisection and said that those who still think they can continue to treat animals as inanimate property would be sent to concentration. Oh yeah, I read that already. It was an earlier up here somewhere. But that's that page. Forestry of the Third Reich. Let's see. This one, Hitler vegetarian, the Nazi animal protection movement. It's kind of like it gives the feel of an op-ed though, but there were a few things. Like the intro is just like kind of like what the author was kind of going through to go on with this article. Let's see, where does it start? As soon as the Nazi Party came to power in 1933, they began to enact scores of animal protection laws, some of which are still operative in Germany. We'll actually look at one of the major laws that they enacted. For example, in Nazi Germany, people who mistreated their pets could be sentenced to 2 years in jail. The Nazis banned the production of foie gras and clocking and docking. Sorry, like the D looks like there's a space in between, and docking of ears and tails of dogs without anesthesia. They severely restricted invasive animal research. So they were against like animal testing and stuff. Um, Established the first laws ensuring that animals used in films were not mistreated, and also mandated humane slaughter procedures for food animals and for the euthanasia of terminally ill pets. Hmm. Concerned with the suffering of lobsters in restaurants. Yeah, because like the last page said that they had a problem with boiling lobsters and crabs. In addition, the German government established nature preserves, a school curriculum for the humane treatment of animals, and they hosted one of the first international conferences on animal protection. It sounds like what vegans would want. So, this really seems that the vegans are the real Nazis here, because this is just basically all, um, what vegans want. Every vegan activist I've seen keeps saying that they want everyone to be, humane to the animals, like to an extreme level. While concern for animal suffering was not universal among the Nazi hierarchy, Arluck and Sachs convincingly argue that pro-animal sentiment was widespread. Um, we already read that part. It's just about like send people to concentration camps who treated animals as property. The feared Heinrich Himmler once asked his doctor, who was a hunter, "How can you find pleasure, Eric Kernstein, in shooting from behind at poor creatures browsing on the edge of a wood? It really is murder." That sounds very, very familiar. Don't vegans like to go up to random people, especially, when they're fishing or hunting, or, just basically being human? It, and vegan like not vegan restaurants, like vegans who go to restaurants and stuff, to stores, they're always saying, it's murder if you're doing this to the animals. Hmm. Jews weren't allowed to have pets. Was Hitler vegetarian? Does it matter? Claimed to be an animal lover. In his 1938 autobiography, describes how when animals, like food, was scarce, he would share his meager meals with mice. I wonder if vegans would do that. Hitler had a particular fondness for ravens, wolves, and dogs. He abhorred hunting and horse racing and referred to them as the last remnants of a dead feudal world. I want to describe it as that. Was he vegetarian? Hitler once told a female companion who ordered sausage while they were on a date, "I didn't think you wanted to devour a dead corpse. The flesh of dead animals, cadavers." Hmm. Who else refers to meat as the flesh of dead animals and corpses? Cadavers I've never really heard of, like the word, but who else refers to meat as such? Huh? Hitler claimed that meat eating was a major factor in the decline of civilization and that vegetarianism would rejuvenate society. I want to do one little search. When was veganism kind of like done? Like when was the first bit of veganism? Because it seems like Hitler would be more of a vegan um than a vegetarian if his mindset's like that. When was Okay, yeah, it was after. It was coined 1944. So that was basically super close to when Hitler was, died. So he probably would be vegan. 1944, 1944. So yeah. Occasionally ate sausage. For the most modern Americans, vegetarian. For the most modern American vegetarians, 70% whom sometimes eat meat. More important is, and I agree that whether Hitler ate no meat, a little meat, or a lot of meat is completely unrelated to the arguments against eating animals. Simply because Hitler was mostly vegetarian in his dietary habits does not undermine the case for animal rights. The first is that human animal interactions are fraught with paradox and inconsistencies. The existence of a culture in which leaders obsess over the suffering of lobsters in Berlin restaurants while they were gassing people in concentration camps with rat poison represents a moral inversion of incomprehensible proportions. The Nazi animal protectionists represent examples of fundamentally bad people doing good things for animals. This pattern of behavior is rare. However, the converse, fundamentally good people who treat animals badly, is common. The United States killed a wounded deer for the enjoyment of recreational hunters. Yeah, it just goes on um about that. Yeah, apparently Hitler thought people who ate meat were, murderers. So yeah, there's that. Historian uncovers Nazi animal laws. The Nazis are remembered for their brutality and cruelty. So it's surprising to many that when the party was in power, it also passed laws to protect animals. First law, according to Piper, was passed in 1933, not long after the Nazis rose to power. Under the Animal Protection Act, it was forbidden to mistreat or handle animals in any way that would harm them. We'll go into that as this tab right here. So it actually, it's actually the law itself. Let's see. It was Horse feeding fowl was banned, and the law also provided protection to animals in circuses and zoos. In the initial version of the act, experimentation on animals was prohibited as well. People who neglected their pets could be arrested and fined. These laws were very progressive at the time. A year later, Nazis passed an act that dealt with hunting wild animals. At the time, only Great Britain had any laws protecting wild animals, but they were nowhere near as strong as the Third Reich laws. Salt prohibited hunting on horseback, poisoning animals, and using traps. In addition, only German citizens and those who met the Aryan racial standards were permitted to hunt. 1935, additional restrictions on hunting protected some animals, such as wolves. What is interesting is that wolves were already extinct in Germany at the time. Wolves did exist in Poland though, and I think this law showed that the Nazis were already looking across their borders and planning to take over. The Nazis saw the land and the animals living on it as sacred to Germany. They saw ethnic minorities as invaders to their country. So they value, like, Nazi Germany basically valued animals above human beings. It sounds like vegans like that too, because they would rather have people risk their health as long as you do it for the animals, right? Animal Protection Act also attacked the methods of kosher slaughter. Recall seeing one very graphic film, Dominion, maybe, as a cruel practice. It's something Germans would never do, but Jews would engage in. Why does it sound like it's Dominion? So they probably watched their version of Dominion. Gained support for the Nazis from animal protection groups and conversation conservatives. I can't read. Conservationists in Germany at the time. These supporters were usually not Nazis or interested in the party's other policies, but because they were in favor of these laws, they added their support to the regime. When Germany invaded France, the animal protection laws were put in place there and again received support from French citizens interested in these causes. They were not happy about the German occupation, but they supported the laws and would post signs about the restrictions on hunting, for example. In Poland, the laws were used in different ways. Chose areas of lands and designated them as nature preserves for animals such as wolves and beavers. People living in these parcels of lands were forcibly removed and then sent to death camps. Hmm. There's some evidence that he did love and care about animals, but I think the laws were more closely related to a couple of things. One was the idea of sacred soil of Germany and the animals belonging to the natural Germany like the Aryans did, so they deserve protection. Secondly, it was a first step to restricting and controlling the non-Aryans in the country. The laws still on the books. Mm. This all seemed like a positive thing at first glance, but there is a dark side to them, and they foreshadow the true goals of the Nazis. This is kind of like a summary of what the law was. We'll look at what the law is like in this, like the last bit. But it really does seem like Nazi Germans basically, at least Hitler did, viewed German land and its animals to be sacred. Hmm. While Jews were sent to death camps, Nazi police worried about animal rights. Uh, oh, okay, we'll read the first paragraph at least. In the summer of 1942, Fritz Sendel, chief of staff of the German Order Police in occupied Poland, sent a message to the force commanding officers. Is subject protecting the rights of animals that were transported on trains. In the spirit of Right Animal Protection Act, I order with immediate effect that officers of the stations, German and non-German, intervene immediately in case of cruelty to animals, put a stop to it, and report the offenders. He wrote. Um, what do the comments say? Mm. Same attitudes can be observed today among many so-called environmentalists. They despise humans and are willing for animals to die and go extinct so long as they are untouched by human hands. Yeah. Can I upvote? No, I can't. That's it. I'm not gonna pay for an article, that, you know, mm, subscriber only. Yeah, never mind. I consider vegetarian. Oh, this is the same thing we read. Okay. Why German Nazis were big fans of animal rights. It's by Seattle Times. So, I don't like animals that suffer pains. Another co like oped. They might sell it. Started abusing me for hypocrisy for not being vegetarian. By way of getting even, I regaled him the history of the Nazis and their role as animal rights activists. Kind of like what I'm doing with this video. Um, Horses, cats, and apes were singled out for special protection. 1936, a special law was passed regarding the correct way of dispatching lobsters and crabs, and thus mitigating their terminal agonies. Crustaceans were thrown into rapidly boiling water. Bureaucrats at the Nazi Ministry of the Interior produced learned research papers on the kindest method of killing. Animals were to be protected for their own sake, rather than as appendages to human moral and material condition. It was hailed as a new moral concept. International Conference of Berlin in the topic of animal protection saw the podium festooned with swastikas and crowned by a banner declaring, entire epochs of love will be needed to repay animals for their value and service. I don't think animals would really, you know, care whether or not we saluted them or whatever. Hmm. Blondie is Hitler, one of Hitler's dogs. Um, the only real friend one has in the end is the dog. The more I get to know the human species, the more I care for my Benno. The Nazis abolished moral distinctions between animals and people by viewing people as animals. The result was that animals could be considered higher than some people. And it really does sound like the vegan mindset. About religion, race purification. Nazi Germany identity relied on the blurring of boundaries between humans and animals and constructing of a unique phil- phylogenic hierarchy that altered conventional human-animal distinction and imperatives. Emirates activists and vegetarians often fidget when told this history and say, so what? The moral here is not that there is something inherently Nazi-like in campaigning against vivisection or deploring the eating of animals' meats or reveling in the cruelties of the feedlot and the slaughterhouse. The moral is that ideologies of nature imbued with corrupt race theory and degraded romanticism and can lead people up the wrong path to genocide. For the Nazis, their death camps were, in a way, romanticism's revenge for slaughterhouses and the hog squeal of the universe. So yeah, vegans are, still in the wrong for um this because they have this whole mindset. They still have that mindset that you know um the deploring of eating of animals' meats. Okay, that's that article. Feeling their pain, animal rights, and the Nazis. Significant power Nazi passed laws regulating slaughter of animals. Later that year, um, that's the end of unbearable torture and suffering animal experiments. Should later partially rescinded in Bavaria and Prussia. I'm just trying to find like what else is new to read out. Laws protecting wildlife were also passed under somewhat eugenic protocols. The duty of true hunter is not only to hunt but also nurture and protect wild animals in order that a more varied, stronger, and healthier breed shall emerge and be preserved. Nazis were much concerned about endangered species and Goring set up nature reserves to protect elk, bison, bears, and wild horses. Called forests God's cathedrals. Um, Aim of the law for depiction was, as the preamble stated, to awaken and strengthen compassion. It's one of the highest moral values of the German people. Animals were to be protected for their own sake rather than as appendages to the human moral and material condition. This was hailed as a new moral concept. 1934 International Conference Berlin on the topic of animal protection saw a podium festooned with swastikas and okay, well, we were about the whole salute thing. Um, real noted for the love of pets and certain animals, notably apex predators. Yeah, Hitler had particular euthys. Hitler had a particular enthusiasm for birds and most of all for wolves. From a Disney movie. This is a cartoon short. Sorry for nitpicking on that. Um, Nazi leaders harbored affection towards animals, but antipathy to humans. Hitler was given films that displayed animals killing people. Watched with other film shows humans killing animals. Hitler covered his eyes and begged to be told when the slaughter was over. Hmm. Kenny probably watched their version of Dominion. As soon as I'm with a person for 3 days, I don't like him any longer. I've learned to despise the human being from the bottom of my soul. Nazis allied themselves with animals since both were portrayed as victims of oppressors such as Jews. Hmm. An ardent vegetarian who urged attacks on laboratories and physical assault on vivisectionists whom he associated with Jews, presumably because of kosher killing methods. Hmm. Who else likes to invade, laboratories and places of, slaughter? He believed that the purity of Aryans had been compromised by meat eating and mixing of the races. A non meat diet plus the Eucharist would engender a return to the original, uncorrupted state of affairs. Wow. That's right. That was two. By viewing people as animals. The result was animals could be considered higher than some people. I already read that. Um, in the cult of the Germans, the pig occupies first place and is the first among the domestic animals. I wonder if that has some relevance to Animal Farm. Red flag. Okay. I think we read all this already, like really before. This one of the earlier pages. But here is the last bit. This is the animal protection law. Um, it is the law itself. Um, let's see. Um, National Socialist conceptions of humanity's relationship with nature inform numerous policies relating to environmental protection. These policies included the introduction of new laws outlining the treatment of animals within the right. Animal protection law introduced, I'm not going to pronounce that, introduced in November of 1933, was the first nationwide law explicitly protecting animals to be enacted within Germany. The law identified and prohibited a range of mistreatments, including overlooking labor animals, exhibiting, filming, or otherwise publicly displaying animals in conditions that would lead to negative health effects, and even grooming restrictions, such as prohibition against the docking, clipping of dogs' ears, tails, after the animal reached 2 weeks of age. The law also specifically set strict limitations on animal experimentation, outlawing any practice or experiment that would endanger the life or well being of an animal. Although the law itself contained no explicit anti Semitic statements or prohibitions, the restrictions on animal experimentation did not speak to anti Semitic. Um, I lost my place. I think this practice would endanger the law itself. Anti-Semitic statements or prohibitions. The restrictions on animal experimentation did not did speak to the anti-Semitic belief that Jewish experimental science represent an affront to the natural laws governing the relationship between humans, animals, and nature. In this way, the animal protection law outlined here also informed an important part of the larger propaganda effort to create and cultivate cultural links between National Socialism and German nature. So this is the animal protection law, November 24, 1933. The right government has passed the following law, which hereby promulgate the Section 1 Cruelty to Animals. It is forbidden to torture an animal unnecessarily or maltreat with brute force. Animal torture is defined as causing an animal prolonged or repeated substantial pain or suffering. Torture is unnecessary. Torture is unnecessary if it does not serve any reasonable justified purpose. Maltreatment is defined as causing an animal considerable pain. Maltreatment that arises from callous disposition defined as brute force. Regulations for the protection of animals. It is prohibited to neglect an animal when in its keeping, care, or accommodation, or in its transport in such a way that it suffers considerable pain or considerable harm as a result. To use an animal unnecessarily for work which obviously exceeds its strength, or which causes it considerable pain, or which it's unable to perform due to its condition. To use an animal for training, filming, showing, or similar events to the extent that they involve substantial pain or substantial damage to the animal's health. To dispose of or acquire a frail, diseased, aborted, or aged domestic animal for which continued life would be torturous for any purpose other than for immediate, painless killing. To abandon a pet for the purpose of disposing it. To train or test dogs on live cats, foxes, or other animals. To clip the ears or tail of a dog over 2 weeks old. Shortening is permitted if done under anesthesia. To clip, dock, the tail of a horse. Shortening is permissible if done under anesthesia by a veterinarian to correct a deformity or disease of the tail frond. To perform a painful procedure on an animal in an improper manner or without anesthesia. Castration shall be considered a painful procedure in the case of horses, cattle, and pigs over 3 months of age, and sexually mature rams and goats. Anesthesia shall not be acquired for the pain if the pain associated with the procedure is minor, or if, in the case of some similar procedures performed on humans, anesthesia does not appear to be feasible in the individual case based on veterinary judgment. To kill a farmed fur-bearing animal otherwise than under anesthesia or otherwise painlessly. To force-feed poultry. To tear out or sever the thighs of live frogs. The importance of docked horses is prohibited. The right minister of the Interior may permit exceptions in particularly justified cases. The use of equids in mining is permitted only with the approval of the competent local authority. Experiments on live animals. It is prohibited to carry out interventions on or treatments involving considerable pain or injury on live animals for experimental purposes, unless the provisions of Section 6 to 8 to stipulate otherwise, which is follows. The Right Minister of the Interior may, on the recommendation of the competent right or land authorities, grant permission to carry out scientific experimentations on live animals to certain scientifically managed institutions or laboratories, provided that the head scientist has the necessary professional training and reliability, that suitable facilities are available to carry out the experimentations on animals, and that good maintenance and accommodation for the laboratory animals is guaranteed. The Right Minister of the Interior may delegate or the granting permission to the supreme rights authorities. The permit may be withdrawn at any time without compensation. The following regulations shall be observed in the performance of animal experiments. The experiments may be carried out only under the full responsibility of the head scientist or the deputies specifically authorized by him. The experiments may only be carried out by a person scientifically trained for this purpose or under their supervision, and only by avoiding any pain which is unnecessary for the purpose. Experiments for research purposes may only be undertaken if they are expected to produce a specific result that has not been confirmed by science, or if they serve to clarify hitherto unsolved questions. Experiments shall be conducted only under anesthesia, unless, if judgment of the head scientist, the purpose of the experiment absolutely precludes it, or the pain associated with the procedure is less than the impairment of the well-being of the experimental animal associated with anesthesia. No more than one severe surgical pain or painful bloodless experiment shall be performed on the same unanesthesied animal. Animals suffering considerable pain after completion of a major experiment, especially those involving surgical procedures, shall be killed immediately without pain if, in the judgment of the head scientist, this is compatible with the purpose of of the experiment. Experiments on horses, dogs, cats, and monkeys may be carried out only if the intended purpose cannot be achieved by experiments on other animals. No more animals may be used than are necessary to resolve the research question. Animal experiment Animal experience for the teaching purposes are only permitted if other teaching aids, example pictures, models, preparation, films, are not sufficient. Records shall be kept on the type of animals used, the purpose, the performance, and the result of the experiments. The provisions of sections 5 to 7 shall not apply to experiments on animals of the administration of justice or the or to vaccinations and blood samples taken from live animals for the purpose of detecting diseases in humans or animals or for obtaining or testing determination of the value serums or vaccines according to procedures that have already been tested or recognized by the state. However, these animals shall also be killed painlessly as soon as possible if they suffer significant pain and the killing is compatible with the purpose of the experiment. Penal provisions. Whoever unnecessarily tortures or crudely maltreats an animal shall be punished by imprisonment for no more than 2 years and by a fine or by one of these penalties. Whoever, except in the cases referred to in subsection 1, performs an experiment on live animals without the required permissions shall be punished by imprisonment for no more than 6 months and by a fine or by one of these penalties. A fine up to 150 Reichmarks or imprisonment insofar as the act is not already covered by the provisions of punishment under sections 1, 2, shall be imposed on anyone who willfully or negligently contravenes one of the provisions um, of subsection 2 to 4, contravenes a provision of subsection 7, contravenes a regulation issued by a Reichsmaster of the Interior or by a land government in accordance with subsection 14 for the protection of animals, fails to prevent children or other persons under his supervision and belonging to his household from contravening to the provisions of this law. In addition to the punishment set for the intentional violation under Section 9, confiscation or killing of the animal may be decided if it belongs to the convicted person. Instead of confiscation, it may be ordered that the animal be accommodated and cared for elsewhere, at the expense of the convicted person for a period of 3 months. If no specific person can be prosecuted or sentenced, confiscation or killing of the animal may be ordered independently if the requirements for this are otherwise met. If a person has been has repeatedly been convicted by a final court decision of the intentional infringement on the basis of subsection 9, the competent state authority may prohibit him from keeping certain animals or from using them professionally or from trading them for a period of time or permanently. After 1 year has elapsed since the prohibition order became final, the competent state authority may revoke the order. Animals culpably neglected in their keeping, care, or accommodation may be taken away from their owner by the competent state authority and accommodated elsewhere until there is a guarantee that the animals will be kept in a proper manner. The cost of this accommodation shall be imposed on the guilty party. If in animal proceedings is Dang it. Go away. If in a criminal proceedings it is doubtful whether the offense falls under prohibition section 2, numbers 1 or 2, the official veterinarian and as far as agriculture enterprise are concerned, the Right Nutrition Authority shall be heard on the matter at the earliest possible stage of the proceedings. For the final provisions, for the purpose of this law, stunning shall be understood to mean all procedures which render generally painless or locally eliminate the sensation of pain. The Right Master of the Interior may issue legal and administrative regulations to implement and supplement this law, insofar as he does not make use of this authorization. State governments may issue the necessary implementing regulations. This law shall enter into force on February 1st, 1934, with the exception of subsections numbers 1, uh, subsection 2, numbers 8 and 11, subsection 3, for which the Right Master of the Interior, in consultation the Right Master for the Food and Agriculture, shall fix the date of entry into force. Sections 145B and 360, number 13 of the Criminal Code shall cease to have effect on February 1st, 1934. The provisions of the Bird Protection Act of May 30, 1908 shall remain unaffected. Berlin, to November 24, 1933. So yeah, that is the animal protection law. Um that was a long read. um but it seems that, you know, vegans would have no problem with all this. Um and I just noticed my camera froze because I'm on OBS right now. Um Dang it. That's gonna I don't know when that happened. But it's this webcam. But that'll be it for this video. I don't know how when I'll upload again on this channel. It's just because I have to do it at night. Because that's when I get the least interruptions. Like, because during the day there's like various noises and stuff that goes on. Um, and I have other channels to take care of too. So, this will be it for this viewing. I don't know what I'll do next time, but this will be it for now. Um, all right. See you next time. Bye.